I don't date coworkers, Willa Nolan said flatly, folding her arms as she stared across the breakroom table at the guy who just made her laugh so hard coffee nearly came out of her nose. Zayden Stone blinked, then grinned like she hadn't just hit him with a full stop. Good thing I'm only here for the week, then, she raised a brow. Temporary warehouse worker, huh? What happened, college dropout? Zayden leaned back in his chair, pretending to stretch, but really just buying time. She was smart, sharp-tongued, ridiculously beautiful in the most unbothered way. No makeup, paint smudges on her jeans, hair tied up in a messy bun, a woman who clearly didn't care about impressing anyone. Perfect. Nope, he said casually. Just figuring some things out. Willa narrowed her eyes. You're weird. Zayden laughed. You're welcome. He watched her stand and toss her coffee cup. She didn't know he owned the entire distribution company she worked for. Didn't know the guy who'd walked in last week pretending to be a temp was actually the 30-year-old billionaire behind Stone Tech Industries. He'd built it from scratch, started with one app in college, grew it into a tech empire. Now he had penthouses in 3 cities, a private jet, and a security team that begged him not to do stupid things like this. But he was tired. Tired of women only caring about his bank account. Tired of fake smiles and gold-digging conversations that always ended with, "So what do you drive?" So he'd shaved the stubble, pulled on some beat-up jeans, and told HR to assign him a fake identity. And then Willa had walked in. She was a floor supervisor, smart, bossy, quick to snap back, but always helping people when they weren't looking. She'd offered to lend him gloves when she thought he had none. Bought him a soda on his first day and said, "This place doesn't get easier, but the soda helps." She didn't know who he was, and he didn't want her to yet. "Zayden," she called out from across the warehouse floor 2 days later. "You stacked those pallets like a drunk raccoon." "Fix it." He wiped the sweat from his brow and jogged over. "What does a drunk raccoon even stack like?" "Exactly like that disaster you just left by Bay 3, she said, hands on her hips. For a second, he just watched her. Noticed the tiny scar above her eyebrow, the way her ponytail swayed when she walked, the fire in her eyes when she talked to people like she actually gave a damn. He hadn't felt this pulled toward someone in ever. "Don't look at me like that," she muttered. "Like what? Like you're memorizing my face." "Maybe I am." She blinked, thrown off for a second. "You're not special. Everyone flirts with the boss." He grinned. "I'm not the boss. You think I don't know who runs what here?" She stepped closer. "I get it. You're charming. A little too clean for a warehouse rat. You've probably got a trust fund and you're just slumming it for fun." Zayden's jaw tightened. "What if I told you I wasn't?" She tilted her head. "Then I'd say you're lying." He didn't answer, just grabbed a pallet jack and started restacking the mess. Later that week, it rained hard, the kind of downpour that turned parking lots into wading pools. Everyone else had already left, but Willa was still inside, closing up the inventory room. Zayden waited by the door. "I'll walk you out," he said when she appeared. She hesitated. "I don't need help." "I didn't say you did." They stepped out. Rain hit hard. She cursed under her breath as they ran toward her car. The second she stepped into a puddle, she slipped and he caught her, arms locking tight around her waist. For one breathless second, she looked up at him. His face was wet and his hair was plastered to his forehead, but his eyes were steady, focused entirely on her. "Thanks," she whispered. He didn't let go. "You should come with me," she said suddenly. "There's a diner down the road. Dry off, get a real meal." Zayden blinked. "You're inviting me to dinner. Don't make it weird." "It's already weird," he laughed. "But yeah, I'd like that." The diner smelled like old coffee and burgers and had the kind of cracked leather booths that told 1,000 stories. Willa ordered pancakes at 8 p.m. without shame. He ordered the same. "So what's your deal?" she asked, stabbing her syrup-drenched stack. "You don't talk about yourself." "I'd rather hear about you." She rolled her eyes. Classic deflection. He leaned forward. "Fine, I used to run a company, got tired, needed a break." "So I'm here." She stared. "Wait, you're serious?" He shrugged. "What if I told you I wanted to see if I could live without money for a while?" "I'd say you're insane," she said, laughing, "and full of it, but I'd also respect it." Zayden swallowed hard. She wasn't impressed. She was intrigued. She didn't ask what kind of car he drove or if he had a beach house. She just wanted honesty, I like you, he said quietly. She looked up. You don't know me. I want to. She hesitated, then smiled. Okay, over the next 2 weeks they grew closer. He helped her paint her apartment one Saturday. She showed him how to fix a sink. They argued about music, laughed about terrible movies, and shared late-night burgers in his beat-up borrowed truck, but every night guilt twisted in his stomach, because she didn't know who he really was. And when she found out, he wasn't sure if she'd forgive him. 3 weeks in, they were sitting on the hood of her car watching the stars when she turned to him. Zayden, if you ever lied to me really lied, would you tell me? His heart stopped. I think I'd have to, he said softly. Even if it ruined everything, she nodded slowly. Good, because I don't do lies. He looked at her, really looked, and knew right then he was in trouble, because Willa had already stolen his heart, and she didn't even know it yet. You're avoiding something, Willa said, balancing on the top step of the ladder as she reached for a crooked box on the top shelf. And I don't mean the shipment manifest. Zayden stood below, one hand lightly on the ladder to steady it. Avoiding what? Whatever it is you're not telling me. She slid the box free and passed it down. You change the subject every time I ask about your past. He caught it and set it aside. Maybe I'm just boring. Willa climbed down, brushing dust off her hands. You boring. You've got secrets in your eyes. Zayden didn't answer. His phone buzzed in his pocket and he tensed before slipping it out to silence it. The name on the screen had flashed too quickly for Willa to catch, but she saw the way his jaw shifted, like he was biting back a thought. She leaned against the shelving unit, crossing her arms. So what's the deal? Secret family, former spy, witness protection, he lifted a brow. Would any of those make you like me more? That depends. Are you secretly bald under that mop of hair? He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes this time. Willa pushed off the wall. You're a good liar, Zayden, but your eyes give you away. Every time I ask too many questions, you look like you're about to run. I'm not running, he said quietly. Then maybe stop hiding. He looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't accusing. She was offering him a chance, but Zayden knew the truth wouldn't land softly. It would shatter everything. An hour later, they sat in the back lot, eating sandwiches from the food truck that parked outside on Thursdays. The sky was turning a sleepy gold, the sun dipping low behind the warehouse roof. Tell me something true, Willa said, unwrapping her sandwich. Anything? My mom was a waitress, Zayden said. Raised me by herself. We didn't have much, but she taught me how to fight for what mattered. Willa looked over at him, surprised. That's not what I expected. I know. She was quiet for a beat. Mine worked at a flower shop. She used to press roses in books and leave them on my pillow when I had a bad day. Sounds like she was sweet. She died when I was 16. Zayden reached over and touched her hand just briefly. I'm sorry. That's life, she said with a shrug, but her voice cracked on the last word. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Willa asked, Do you think people can change who they are? He didn't hesitate. Yes, but only if they want to. She nodded slowly. Good answer. That night, Zayden drove back to the rented apartment he'd been using. Bare walls, cheap furniture, no trace of the penthouse he actually called home. The second he walked in, his assistant, Rowan, was waiting. You've already been here too long, Rowan said, arms folded. The board's asking questions. Let them, Zayden said, tossing his keys on the counter. We agreed. I take a break. No stone tech meetings, no press, just time. You said 2 weeks. It's been almost 4. I'm not done yet. Rowan narrowed his eyes. This isn't about the company anymore. It's about her. Zayden didn't deny it. You think she'll be okay with the lie? I don't know. You're risking everything. I already have. Willa's world was steady, predictable. She liked control, like knowing that if she worked hard, she'd get results. Zayden was a storm waiting to hit her shore, and he knew it. The next morning, she was waiting outside when he pulled up. She had a duffel bag slung over her shoulder and a look he couldn't read. Road trip, she said simply. You in? He blinked. What? I've got 2 days off. There's a flea market upstate I've been wanting to hit. You want in or not? Zayden hesitated. What's in it for me? She grinned. Corn dogs, terrible coffee, and maybe if you behave, I'll let you pick the music. He opened the passenger door and slid in. I was born ready. They drove for hours, the landscape changing from concrete to fields, buildings giving way to trees. Willa talked about her sister in Oregon, her dream of opening a reclaimed furniture shop, the time she got lost in the woods as a kid and was rescued by a dog with one eye and a limp. Zayden listened like each word mattered because they did. Every story was a piece of her and he wanted all of them. At a gas station, she disappeared for 5 minutes and came back holding 2 cowboy hats. "Absolutely not," he said, eyeing the one she placed on his head. "You'll wear it and you'll love it. You're lucky I like you." That's the idea. That night, after flea markets and roadside diners and a breakdown on the side of a mountain where they had to push her car half a mile to a mechanic, they collapsed in a cheap motel room with mismatched bedspreads and humming lights. Willa lay on her back, staring at the ceiling. "You ever think about where you'll be in 10 years, all the time? Where do you see yourself?" Zayden turned his head. "With someone who makes me feel like this," she blinked. "Like what?" "Like I'm not pretending," her breath caught. "That's the first honest thing you've said all week. I told you about my mom. That wasn't the truth you were hiding." Zayden sat up slowly. "You want the truth," she looked at him, eyes steady. "Only if you're ready to lose me." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Because he wasn't ready, and that terrified him more than anything else. Willa didn't speak to him on the drive back. She didn't have to say anything. Her silence filled the car with a tension so thick Zayden could barely breathe. The motel room had been quiet after his failure to confess. She hadn't pressed him again. She just turned off the light, rolled to her side, and left him with his guilt. Now the sun was rising behind them, the sky a pale, bruised blend of lavender and blue. The road stretched ahead, empty and endless. Zayden stared straight ahead, hands gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. "You're not who you say you are," Willa said finally. He didn't flinch. "No, then say it," he swallowed. "My name is Zayden Stone. I own the company." The silence that followed was louder than any explosion. Willa didn't look at him. "Which part?" "All of it. I built it. I've been pretending to be someone else because—" He paused. "I'm tired of everyone wanting something from me. I wanted something real." She didn't answer. "I never meant to lie to you," he said, voice low. "But then I met you and everything changed. You lied the second you introduced yourself," she snapped. "I know. You let me make a fool of myself. I told you things, real things. I didn't take that lightly. You let me think we were equals." Zayden's jaw clenched. "We are." "No," she said, voice sharper. "You're a billionaire who played dress up so you could run from your own life. I don't get to run. I can't afford to disappear into a fantasy for a month." "I wasn't using you. You were testing me," she said, cutting him off. "To see if I'd love you when you had nothing." He stared at the road, guilt boiling in his chest. "I didn't fall in love with a billionaire," she said, quieter now. "I fell in love with a man who helped me fix a sink and wore ugly boots and made fun of my terrible driving." Zayden pulled over, tires crunching on gravel. He turned to face her. "None of that was fake, but the reason you were there was. I came looking to escape," he said. "But I stayed because of you." She finally looked at him, eyes unreadable. "I didn't want you to fall in love with my money," he said. "I wanted you to fall in love with me." "I did," she whispered, "but now I don't know who that is anymore." They sat in silence for a long time. Birds chirped in the distance. A freight truck roared past, then she opened the door and got out. Zayden didn't try to stop her. She stood on the shoulder, arms wrapped around herself, staring into the distance. He watched her through the windshield, heart pounding in his ears. Minutes passed before she got back in. "I need space," she said. "I understand. I'm not quitting." He looked at her, surprised. "I'm not giving you the satisfaction of running away." She fixed her gaze on the dashboard. "I'll finish out the month. Then I'm gone." "Willa, don't." Her voice was steel. "Don't make it harder." They drove the rest of the way in silence. The next week passed in a blur of avoidance. Willa didn't speak to him unless absolutely necessary. She worked with a mechanical focus, eyes down, voice clipped. Zayden felt every second like a punishment. He returned to his penthouse that Friday. The staff had cleaned and restocked it in his absence, but everything felt wrong. Sterile, empty. He stood in the center of the glass-walled living room, staring out at the skyline, thinking of Willa's laugh echoing through a cheap motel room, her hand brushing his in the dark. He turned down every meeting request. ignored every call from the board. Even Rowan stopped knocking after the third unanswered message. On Sunday, he drove back to the warehouse, parked across the street and watched from a distance. Willa stepped out for lunch, hair twisted up, clipboard in hand. She smiled at someone, not him. The ache in his chest grew unbearable. He spent the next day pacing his office, back in the tower that bore his name. The city stretched out beneath him, a kingdom he no longer wanted to rule. He called Rowan. "I need an event," he said. "Something huge, black tie, press invited. Invite the entire staff from the warehouse." Rowan hesitated. "You're not doing this for the board." "No," Zayden said. "I'm doing it for her." Thursday night came fast. The ballroom glowed with chandeliers and music. Waiters passed champagne. The city's elite mingled beneath floating candles and gold-trimmed drapes. Zayden stood near the entrance, dressed in a midnight navy tuxedo, scanning every newcomer like his life depended on it. Because it did. Then he saw her. Willa stepped in, wearing a deep plum gown that flowed like ink around her legs. Her hair was down, curled just slightly at the ends, and her expression was unreadable. She moved through the crowd with a grace he hadn't seen before, like she'd stepped into a world she didn't belong to and refused to apologize for it. He approached slowly. "You came," he said. "I wanted to see how the other half lives," she said coolly. "And your assistant said there'd be chocolate-covered strawberries." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I didn't bring you here for dessert. I figured. I wanted to show you the truth," he said. "No pretending, no lies. Too late for that, isn't it?" "Maybe," he said. "But I'm still going to try." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. She stared at it, then back at him. "I'm not proposing," he said. "Not yet, but I want to give you this." She opened it. Inside was a key, simple, silver. "It's to the workshop space on Bleecker," he said. "The one next to that antique bookstore you like. I bought the whole building. You said you wanted to open a furniture shop." Willa said nothing. "It's yours," he said. "No strings, no expectations, just a door, you can walk through it. Or not. Why would you do this?" "Because I love you," he said. "And I'd rather lose you doing the right thing than keep you with a lie." Her fingers closed around the key, then she turned and walked away. Zayden didn't follow, because love, real love, meant letting someone choose. And now, all he could do was wait. A week passed. Willa didn't touch the key. She kept it in the pocket of her coat, the weight of it a constant presence, a question she couldn't stop asking herself. She'd walked away from Zayden at the gala because she needed air space to figure out where her anger ended and where everything else began. But the door he'd opened with that key, it wasn't just about the workshop, it was trust. It was him saying, "Here, I see your dream, I believe in it." And that terrified her more than the lie ever had. At the warehouse, her final week passed in a blur. She kept her head down, finished inventory, trained her replacement, and said a quiet goodbye to the place that had been her constant for the last 3 years. It wasn't glamorous, but it had been hers earned, not given. On her last day. She lingered at her empty desk longer than necessary. It was already dark when she stepped out into the parking lot, the cold biting at her cheeks. She reached into her coat pocket, fingers brushing the key. She didn't go home. Instead, she drove to Bleecker Street. The building was exactly where he'd said it would be, tucked between the bookstore with the stained glass windows and a tiny bistro that smelled like cinnamon and old wine. She stood in front of the door, heart pounding, staring at the lock like it might explode if she touched it. Then, slowly, she slid the key in. The door creaked open. Inside, the space was raw, unfinished walls, high ceilings, exposed beams that begged to be turned into something beautiful. A long wooden table stood in the center, covered in blueprints. Her blueprints, her sketches, her handwriting. He'd found her notebook. Willa stepped forward, fingers trembling slightly as she flipped through the pages. He hadn't just bought a space. He'd taken her half-formed ideas and mapped them out into real plans. Shelving layouts, lighting options, even a mock-up of a logo she'd doodled once and forgotten about. Behind her, a voice echoed softly through the space. "I didn't know if you'd ever come." She turned. Zayden stood in the doorway, his coat dusted with snow, eyes unreadable, shoulders tense. "You gave me space," she said. "You asked for it." Willa crossed her arms. "You went through my notebook." I found it in the glove compartment of your car, he said. You left it that night. I didn't read anything personal, just the business stuff. I didn't think you were still watching. I wasn't watching, he said. I was waiting. She studied him, noting the shadows under his eyes, the way he didn't try to come closer. You were right, she said. I don't trust easily, I know. And you made it harder, he nodded. But you also gave me this, she said, gesturing around the space. And no one's ever done that. No one's believed in me without asking me to shrink myself first. Zayden took a step forward. I didn't want to fix you. I just wanted to stand beside you, she exhaled slowly. Say it again, he hesitated. What? The truth, the whole thing, no edits. He met her gaze squarely. I didn't come to that warehouse looking for love. I was burned out, lost. I'd forgotten how to just be a person without all the noise. And then I met you. You didn't care who I was. You called me out. You challenged me. You laughed at me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a title or a bank account. I felt real. Willa blinked against the sting in her eyes. I fell in love with you, he said, voice rough. Not because you were kind or clever or stronger than anyone I've ever known, but because when I was with you, I wanted to be better. I still do. She didn't move. I lied, he said, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life, but I won't lie to you again. Not ever. The silence stretched, thick with unsaid things, then she closed the distance between them. I'm not looking for perfect, she said, but I need honest, I need real, and I need to know that when things get hard, you won't disappear behind your money or your name. I won't, he said. You have my word. She reached for his hand. He gripped it like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. I'm not ready to forgive everything yet, she said, but I want to try. Zayden nodded, eyes shining. Trying is more than I deserve. No, she said. It's exactly what you've earned. They stood there together in the empty space, the city humming beyond the windows. Snow fell softly outside, blurring the harsh lines of the world. Inside, everything felt possible. Weeks later, the shop opened its doors. Willa called it Second Bloom. The sign was carved from salvaged oak, hung by hand. Zayden didn't cut the ribbon or stand beside her for photos. He stayed behind the scenes, helping her build shelves, carry an inventory, and set up the little coffee nook she'd always dreamed of. People came. They bought. They stayed longer than they needed to. The space had a soul, and everyone felt it. One night, long after closing, Willa found Zayden in the back, fixing a loose hinge on one of the reclaimed cabinets. You still pretending to be a handyman? She asked. He looked up, grinning. I'm getting better, she leaned in the doorway. You know, there's a gala next month, press donors, all the usual suspects. He raised an eyebrow. You want me to take you? No, she said. I want to take you. He stood slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. You want to introduce me as the billionaire or the guy who can't stack pallets straight? She stepped closer, wrapping her arms around his neck. I want to introduce you as mine. Zayden pulled her in, kissed her slow and deep and certain. When he pulled back, he whispered, I never thought I'd find someone like you, she smiled. You didn't. You found someone better. Later that year, they stood on the rooftop of the Bleecker building, surrounded by candlelight and the people who truly mattered. Willa wore a dress that made her feel like herself. Zayden wore a suit that finally fit who he was. They said their vows under the stars, no lies, no tests, just love, earned, honest, and entirely theirs. Willa stood at the center of the showroom, adjusting the final arrangement of sun-washed vintage stools beneath the window. Golden light spilled across the hardwood floor, casting long shadows across the space she'd built from the bones up. The door chimed softly behind her. You moved the stools again, Zayden said, walking in with a box tucked under one arm. They were blocking the light, she replied, stepping back to survey them. And that one was leaning. I don't trust furniture that leans. Good. Then you'll love this. He placed the box on the counter and opened it to reveal a custom-branded set of ceramic mugs, each with the store's name etched in her handwriting along the bottom edge. Willa picked one up, examining the glaze. You used the logo from the napkin sketch. You said you didn't want anything too polished, just something that felt like you. You remembered that. I remember everything you say, he said simply. She stared at him for a long second, then walked over and placed a hand against his chest, just above his heart. You're getting better at showing up. I had a good teacher. That weekend, they hosted a community event in the courtyard behind the shop. Local artists displayed their work. Musicians played acoustic sets under twinkling bulb lights, and the scent of spice and sugar drifted from the bakery across the alley. Willa moved through the space like she belonged there, her laugh rising easily as she greeted customers, encouraged hesitant painters, and gave second graders tips on how not to glue their fingers together. Zayden stayed close, but not too close, always watching, always ready to step in when she needed him. Later in the evening, she found him crouched beside a little girl struggling to hammer a nail into a birdhouse. He guided her hand gently, patient and quiet, until the nail sank straight. When the girl ran off to show her mother, Willa crouched beside him. "You're terrible with power tools," she said. She asked for help. I couldn't say no. She's 5. You didn't have to let her boss you around. He gave her a side glance. Says the woman who gave a 20-minute lecture on the importance of sanding. Splinters are no joke. He reached over and brushed a bit of sawdust from her cheek. "You're glowing. Probably just the string lights or the cider." "No, it's you. You look like someone who's not afraid anymore." She didn't answer right away. Then softly, "I'm learning." A month later, they flew to Oregon. Willa's sister, Ella, met them at the airport with a skeptical look and a tight hug. She'd seen the headlines, knew exactly who Zayden was now. But over the weekend, as he helped their niece build a bookshelf and respectfully stayed out of every family argument, Willa saw her sister's guard begin to lower on the last night as they sat by the fire pit in the backyard. Ella handed Willa a folded piece of paper. "Mom's recipe for lemon shortbread," she said. "You'll want it eventually." Willa blinked. "I thought she never wrote it down." She didn't. I pieced it together from memory and a lot of failed batches. Zayden watched the exchange quietly, his hand resting against Willa's knee beneath the blanket. Back in the city, the shop continued to thrive. People came not just for the furniture, but for the energy Willa brought to the space. She hosted workshops, partnered with local shelters to offer job training, and even started a weekend program for teens interested in woodworking. One night, after locking up, she turned to Zayden as they walked toward the car. "Do you miss it?" He slid his hands into his pockets. "Miss what?" Being in charge of everything, running the empire from the top floor. He considered that. "Sometimes. But then I remember how I used to feel isolated, disconnected. Now I get to build something with you. That feels better." She nodded. "I'm glad you didn't disappear back into your tower." "I don't need it anymore. You still have it, though." "Yeah, but now it's just a place with a view, your home." That winter, snow blanketed the streets early. They spent Christmas morning curled up on the couch in her apartment, drinking cocoa and watching old claymation movies. He gave her a set of hand-carved tools from a family-owned maker in Italy. She gave him a hand-drawn blueprint for a cabin they could build together one summer. He looked up from the sketch with raised brows. "You want to build a house together?" "Not a house," she said. "A space, just ours, away from everything." He grinned. "I like how you think." By spring, they'd started drawing up plans. Their days became a rhythm of creation and quiet moments. Mornings spent in the shop. Afternoons walking through salvage yards or holding meetings with local artists. Nights curled up on her couch, their feet tangled, the world outside fading. One evening, Zayden took her to a rooftop garden in Brooklyn, a space filled with trailing ivy, hanging lanterns, and a single table set with her favorite Thai food. Willa raised an eyebrow. "Romantic dinner for two?" "I had something to ask." She hesitated, then sat as he pulled out her chair. He waited until the sun dipped below the skyline, casting the city in deep gold. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small wooden box, not velvet, not polished, just hand-carved and soft to the touch. Inside lay a ring, no diamond, just a smooth band of silver with a tiny etching of a compass on the inside. Willa stared at it. "I don't want to be your rescue," he said. "I want to be your partner, your teammate, your safe place to land." She looked up, eyes wide, glassy. "I don't need big ceremonies," he said. "Or headlines, just you. Every day in all your moods, I want to build with you, grow with you, fight and laugh and mess up and try again. Will you marry me?" She didn't cry. She smiled, deep, certain, unshakable. "Yes," she whispered. They didn't rush the wedding. They planned it slowly, carefully, with no fanfare. Just close friends, chosen family, and a ceremony held in the courtyard behind the shop. Willa wore a dress she made herself, soft linen with stitched ivy along the hem. Zayden wore a suit with sawdust still on the cuffs. They exchanged vows beneath strings of golden lights, surrounded by reclaimed wood and wildflowers. Willa looked him in the eye and promised to never let him forget who he was beneath the name. Zayden promised to never let her stand alone, even when she insisted she could. As they danced under the stars, he whispered, "You changed everything." She rested her head against his shoulder. "You made me believe again." In the months that followed, life didn't get easier, it got fuller. The shop expanded. The cabin plans moved forward. They argued sometimes over paint colors and scheduling and how many plants was too many. Willa insisted there was no such thing. But the love never wavered. They held hands in silence when words weren't enough. They kissed in grocery aisles and laughed on rainy Tuesdays. They held each other through bad dreams and celebrated victories big and small. They didn't just get a happy ending, they got a beginning worth everything it took to get there. And every day after, they chose each other all over again.